Hello everyone. Today we continue with the chapter 4 and today's our topic is types of pollination. In the previous class we have already learned about what is pollination. Pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a flower. Pollen grains is the powdery yellow substance present in the anther of a flower, which produce the male reproductive cells. And today's our topic is types of pollination. There are mainly two types of pollination: self-pollination and cross-pollination. First one, self-pollination. What is self-pollination? The transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a flower to the stigma of the same flower or another flower on the same plant is called self-pollination. That means when pollen grains are transferred from the anther of a flower to the stigma of the same or another flower on the same plant, it is known as self-pollination. So, in the self-pollination, what's happening? In the self-pollination, the pollen grains are transferred from one flower to the another flower of the same plant. We know that there are so many flowers, maybe so many flowers will be there in one plant. So, the pollen grains transferred from one flower to the another flower of the same plant. It is known as self-pollination. This type of pollination usually does not require carriers or agents such as bees and butterflies. Peanuts, orchids and peas are examples of plants which show self-pollination. Next type of pollination is cross-pollination. What is cross-pollination? The transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a flower to the stigma of a flower present on another plant of the same kind is called cross-pollination. That means when pollen grains are transferred from the anther of one flower to the stigma of a flower present on another plant of the same kind, it is known as cross-pollination. From the picture you can understand it very clearly. That is, it's happening between two or more plants. Here in the picture you can see that the pollen grains are transferred from one plant to another plant of the same kind. It is known as cross-pollination. This type of pollination requires carriers or agents such as insects, birds, wind and water. Apples, tulips and maples are some examples of plants that show cross-pollination. So today we have discussed about two types of pollination, cross-pollination and self-pollination, and we understood the differences between these two also. Self-pollination, what's happening in self-pollination? That is, the pollen grains are transferred from one flower to another flower of the same plant. And cross-pollination, pollen grains are transferred from one plant to another plant. It means the flower of one plant to the another flower of the another plant. That is cross-pollination. Next our topic is agents of pollination. There are so many agents, they are helping the process of pollination. Wind, water, birds and insects play an important role in the process of pollination. These are called agents of pollination. So we have completed chapter 4 and today's your homework is do exercise 4 answer in brief, page number 44 in the copy. What attracts insects and birds towards flowers? Bright colors and sweet smells of petals attract insects and birds towards flowers. What are the male and female reproductive organs of flowering plants? Stamen is the male reproductive organ and pistil is the female reproductive organ of flowering plants. What is pollination? Pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a flower. List the agents of pollination. Wind, water, birds, and insects are the agents of pollination. What is the importance of pollination? Pollination is important because it is the first step in the formation of seeds. From seeds, new plants grow. So do this exercise in the copy. Thank you. Have a nice day.